The twin suns were sinking over the alien city when the soldiers came. Their boots struck the stone road like war drums, and the sound echoed through the crowded square. People stepped aside quickly, afraid to even raise their eyes. In the center of the soldiers' formation walked a young alien girl, her wrists bound in iron, her face pale. She stumbled as they dragged her forward, yet no one dared to help. Everyone knew the punishment for breaking the sacred law, and no one wanted to share her fate. The girl was small compared to the armored guards, her silver skin bruised from rough handling. Her dark eyes scanned the crowd, searching for mercy, but found only silence. The city was ruled by fear, and fear kept every mouth closed. At the front of the square stood a tall stone platform, the place of public punishment. Above it, a banner of the ruling lords fluttered like a shadow across the light. On the platform waited the executioner, holding the weapon of terror, the B. Energy whip. It was a cruel device made of glowing strands of light. Each strike could burn through flesh and muscle. 10 lashes meant a lifetime of scars, or sometimes death if the victim was weak. The crowd knew this, and that is why they turned their faces away. The girl's crime was simple. She had spoken against the rulers. She had dared to say that their laws were unjust. For this, she would pay with pain. Near the edge of the crowd stood a man who did not belong. He was a traveler, a stranger, a human. His skin was not like theirs. His clothes were plain, and his eyes burned with something the others had lost long ago: defiance. He had heard the whispers before. He had listened to how the rulers crushed every voice, every dream, and now he saw it with his own eyes. A child dragged like an animal to be broken. The drums stopped, and silence fell like a heavy cloak. The executioner raised his whip, the light from the weapon painting the walls in red and gold. The girl trembled, her lips forming a prayer. The soldiers forced her to her knees, pressing her head down. The crowd lowered their eyes, not from pity, but from fear. No one wanted to witness what was about to happen. It was better to pretend blindness, to let cruelty pass unchallenged. The whip cracked in the air, its sound sharp as thunder. The first strike was coming, but before it fell, a voice broke the silence. "Stop!" The word cut through the air like steel. Heads turned in shock. The human had stepped forward, his fists clenched, his eyes fixed on the executioner. "I will take her punishment," he said, his voice calm but unshakable. The crowd gasped. The soldiers laughed, their harsh voices carrying over the square. "A human," one sneered. "Does he even know what 10 lashes mean?" Another mocked. The executioner tilted his head, curious but amused. "Why would you suffer for her, outsider?" he asked. The human did not flinch. "Because no one else will," he replied. The alien girl lifted her head, her eyes wide with disbelief. Tears slipped down her cheeks. "No," she whispered. But the soldiers shoved her aside and grabbed the human. They chained his wrists and dragged him to the platform. The girl cried out, struggling against her captors. The human only gave her a small nod, as if to say, "Be still." "It is decided," the crowd murmured in shock. Whispers spread like wildfire. "A human takes the lashes? Why would he do this? What kind of madness is this?" In a world where mercy was weakness, this act was beyond comprehension. The executioner raised the whip again, this time aiming at the stranger. The human's shirt was torn away, exposing his back to the sun. The scars of an old life already marked his skin, but nothing prepared him for what was coming. The soldiers tightened his chains, ensuring he could not move. The girl's screams filled the air as she was forced to watch. The crowd held their breath, their hearts beating faster. No one had seen anything like this before. The whip cracked down, stopping a breath away from the human's skin. The executioner paused, letting the crowd drink in the tension. 10 lashes, he said slowly, meant for the alien girl. Now for the human. The square fell silent once again. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The human stood tall, his eyes never leaving the girl's. And then, the whip came down. The story of courage had begun. but no one in the crowd could imagine what it would lead to. By stepping forward, the human had not only changed the girl's fate, he had shaken the foundation of the entire city. And by tomorrow, the warrior brothers of the girl would kneel before him. But for now, all that existed was the sound of the whip and the silence of a crowd who had just witnessed the first spark of something greater than fear. The whip fell. The sound tore through the square like a thunderclap. The human's body jerked, the first lash searing across his back, leaving a glowing line of pain. The crowd gasped as the scent of burned flesh reached them. The alien girl screamed, her voice breaking, but the soldiers held her tight. She struggled, begging them to stop, yet no one moved to help. All eyes were fixed on the stranger who had chosen suffering that was not his own. The executioner pulled the whip back again. He had expected the human to collapse after the first strike, but the man stayed upright, his jaw clenched, his body trembling but unbroken. The executioner's eyes narrowed, and with a cruel grin, he swung again. The second lash struck, harder than the first. The human staggered but forced himself to stand tall, blood mixed with the glowing burns, sliding down his back. His breath came heavy, but his gaze remained forward. He refused to give them the sound of his pain. The crowd whispered, "This is madness." One said, "No man can take 10. Another muttered. Some turned away, unable to watch, but many could not look away. Something about the human's defiance held them in place. It was not strength of muscle, but something different, something their people had forgotten. The third strike came, sharper, faster. The human's knees buckled, yet he bit his lip until it bled. The girl cried his name, her tears falling freely. Her voice was small against the roar of the whip, but to the human it was enough. He raised his head, forcing himself to stand once more. He had promised himself he would not fall while she watched. At the edge of the square, 3 figures pushed through the crowd. They were tall, broad-shouldered, carrying the same silver skin as the girl, her warrior brothers. They froze at the sight before them, their faces dark with rage. They reached for their weapons, but the guards crossed their spears to block the way. The eldest brother clenched his fists, every muscle in his body shaking. To interfere now would mean death for them all. And so, with eyes burning, they were forced to watch. The fourth lash came. The human's cry escaped this time, sharp and raw. The crowd shuddered at the sound, yet he did not fall. Instead, he lifted his head and glared at the executioner. A silent challenge. The executioner sneered and swung again. The fifth lash landed, ripping deeper into his skin. His body trembled like a tree in a storm, but he stood. The girl turned her face away, unable to watch his suffering. Her brother's eyes filled with something they had never felt before. Shame. 6 lashes. 7 lashes. Each strike left him weaker. Each strike stole more of his strength. The executioner grinned wider with every cry. The soldiers mocked him, shouting insults. See how weak the human is. See how his flesh burns. But still, he did not beg. Still, he did not surrender. By the 8th lash, his vision blurred. He swayed on his feet, the world spinning. But through the haze of agony, he saw her. The alien girl, her wrists still bound, her face wet with tears. She shook her head, begging him with her eyes to stop, but he gave her a faint smile, blood on his lips. He wanted her to know that she was worth it. The 9th lash fell. The human dropped to one knee, his strength nearly gone. The crowd leaned forward, expecting him to collapse. But slowly, painfully, he forced himself back to his feet. The square erupted in gasps. Even the executioner paused. For a heartbeat, startled by the man's will, the brothers exchanged a glance. Never in their lives had they seen such endurance, not even among their strongest warriors. And then came the 10th. The whip cracked across his back. The human's body convulsed, and he fell forward onto the stone. Blood pooled beneath him, his breaths shallow and ragged. The square was silent. No laughter now, no jeers, only silence. The girl broke free from the guards and rushed to his side. Her small hands tried to lift him, tried to shield him. "Why?" she cried. "Why would you do this for me?" The human coughed. his voice barely a whisper. "Because no one else would," he said. His words carried across the hushed square. Simple words, but they struck like a blade. The alien brothers stood frozen, their hearts burning with conflict. They were warriors trained to fight and kill. Yet in all their years they had never seen such courage. They had never seen a man bleed not for himself, but for another. The executioner lowered his whip, unsettled. The soldiers shifted nervously. Something had changed in the air. The human lay broken, but he was not defeated. The girl clutched his hand, her tears falling onto the stone. And her brothers, who had once sworn only to their clan, felt shame twist in their chests. They had failed to protect her, but a stranger, a human, had endured the unendurable. That night, the story of the whipping would spread through the city. Whispers would travel faster than fire, and by morning the alien warriors would kneel, not to the rulers, not to fear, but to the human who had shown them a truth their world had forgotten. Strength was not only in the sword, strength was in sacrifice, and the man who lay bleeding on the stone had proved it. The square was empty now. The drums had gone silent. The banners no longer stirred in the wind. Only the marks of blood on the stone remained, glowing faintly under the twin moons. The human had been carried away by the soldiers like a broken doll, his body limp, his back torn open by fire and steel. The alien girl had begged to follow, but they pushed her aside, her wrists still bound, her voice raw from screaming. When the crowd dispersed, whispers filled the alleys. The human endured it all. 10 lashes, yet he did not beg. Why would he bleed for her? The girl's warrior brothers did not speak. Their faces were carved from stone, their hearts heavy with shame. They had been too late, too powerless. They were raised to protect their kin, yet a stranger had done what they could not. Their eyes followed the trail of blood through the streets. They swore silently that they would not forget this night. The human was thrown into a small stone chamber beneath the soldiers' barracks. No one expected him to live till morning. His back was a map of wounds, glowing with burns that would never fully fade. He lay on the cold ground, his breaths shallow and ragged. Yet even in the darkness, his spirit did not break. When he opened his eyes, he did not see walls. He saw the face of the girl, kneeling beside him. She had slipped past the guards, her chains broken by her brothers before they vanished into the shadows. Now she pressed a cloth against his wounds, her hands shaking. Tears streaked down her silver cheeks, dripping onto his battered skin. "Why?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Why would you take my pain?" The human winced, but forced a weak smile. "Because no one else would," he said again. His voice was faint yet steady, the same words he had spoken in the square, words that refused to die. The girl bit her lip, her heart aching. She had known kindness from her brothers, but never from a stranger, especially not from a human. Outsiders were seen as weak, lesser, unworthy. Yet this one had shown a strength her people had forgotten, not the strength of muscle, not the strength of weapons, but the strength to suffer for another. The chamber was quiet, except for the sound of his breathing. Above them, the city slept uneasily. Rumors spread like wildfire through every home and every market. Mothers whispered to their children, warriors muttered among themselves. The human did not fall. Perhaps strength is not only in the sword. The idea was dangerous, but ideas once born cannot be caged. The girl dipped the cloth in a small bowl of water, cleaning his wounds again. Every touch made him groan, yet he did not push her hand away. His eyes stayed on her face, calm despite the pain. "You should not be here," he whispered. "If they catch you, you'll suffer too." She shook her head fiercely. "I don't care," she said. "You gave me back my life. I will not let yours fade alone." The door creaked, and the brothers stepped inside. Their heavy footsteps filled the chamber, their tall frames casting shadows across the walls. The eldest brother's jaw was tight, his eyes like fire. He looked at the human lying broken on the floor and felt something twist inside his chest. This was not pity. It was shame. A shame so heavy it bent his pride. He knelt slowly, his armored knees striking the stone. The other two followed, lowering their heads. The girl gasped. Never before had she seen her proud brothers bow to anyone. The human blinked, confused by the gesture. He tried to push himself up, but the pain was too great. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice hoarse. The eldest brother raised his head, his voice low but steady. "From this night forward, your pain is our pain," he said. "Your honor is our honor. Your life is our life." The human shook his head weakly. "You owe me nothing. I only did what was right." But the brothers lowered their heads again. "To us, you are more than a man," the second brother said. "You are proof that strength is not only blood and battle." The girl's tears fell harder. For her, this moment was more powerful than the whipping itself. Her brothers, proud warriors of their clan, had bowed to a broken human. Something had shifted in the order of their world, and nothing would ever return to the way it was. Outside the chamber, soldiers muttered in unease. Some said the human would die before dawn. Others whispered that if he lived, he would become a danger. But none could erase the truth of what they had seen. The human's defiance had planted a seed, one that would grow in silence under the cover of the night. The brothers stayed on their knees until the human's eyes closed in exhaustion. The girl continued to clean his wounds, whispering soft words of comfort. Above them, the moons shone brightly. A city built on fear now trembled with doubt, and in the shadows a legend was taking shape. By tomorrow, the rulers would learn of what happened. By tomorrow, soldiers would march again. But tonight belonged to silence. Tonight belonged to whispers. And tonight belonged to a broken human whose courage was stronger than chains. The first light of dawn crept through the cracks in the stone chamber. The human stirred, his breath shallow, his body heavy with pain. Every lash on his back burned as if the fire still lived inside his flesh. But he did not cry out. He opened his eyes slowly, expecting chains, expecting silence. Instead, he saw the alien girl sitting beside him, her head resting against the wall, her eyes swollen from a night without sleep. Her brothers stood like shadows at the edge of the room, silent and unmoving. They had not left him through the night. Warriors of their clan, proud men who had fought beasts and enemies without fear, now watched over a broken human who had fought with nothing but courage. When the human tried to push himself up, his arms trembled and he sank back with a groan. The eldest brother stepped forward quickly, steadying him with strong hands. "Do not move," the brother said, his deep voice almost gentle. "You will tear your wounds open again." The human looked at him, confused. "I don't understand," he whispered, his throat dry. "Why do you care?" The eldest brother's jaw tightened, his eyes dark. "Because we failed," he said. "You protected our sister when we did not. You stood when we did not. You bled when we should have been there." The human shook his head weakly. "I did what anyone should have done," he said. The second brother stepped forward now, his silver skin catching the faint light. "Not anyone," he said firmly. "No one here would have taken those lashes, no one but you." The youngest brother, quiet until now, dropped to one knee. His voice trembled as he spoke. "You gave us back our sister, and you gave us back our honor." The girl gasped as she watched. Her proud brothers, warriors who had never lowered their heads to kings or rulers, were kneeling before a battered human. The eldest joined his brother, bending his knee until the stone cracked beneath his weight. The second brother followed. Bowing his head low, all three spoke together, their voices deep and steady. "From this day, your pain is our pain. Your life is our life. Your enemies are our enemies." The chamber shook with the sound of their oath. The human's eyes widened in disbelief. "No," he said, coughing blood. "You owe me nothing. I didn't ask for this," but the eldest brother raised his head, his eyes blazing. "You may not ask, but we will give," he said. "In our world, sacrifice is the highest honor. Higher than victory, higher than blood, higher even than life. You gave your body to shield our sister. You endured the whip when no one else dared. To us you are not only a man, you are a warrior greater than any we have known." The human fell silent, his chest rising and falling with ragged breaths. He had not done it for honor, not for glory, not for oaths. He had done it because it was right. But here, in this place ruled by fear, his simple act had become something far greater. The girl reached for his hand, her fingers trembling. "You are not alone now," she whispered. "My brothers will stand with you, and so will I." For a moment, the human closed his eyes. He could feel the weight of their words. It was not pride he felt, but a strange ache deep inside him. He had carried burdens alone for so long, and now others were offering to carry them with him. He wanted to protest again, but his voice faltered. Instead, he gave a faint nod. "Then let us stand together," he said softly. The oath was sealed. Outside the chamber, the city was stirring, but the whispers had not died. They had grown stronger, spreading from mouth to mouth like wildfire. The human endured 10 lashes. The warriors of silver bowed to him. The rulers heard these whispers, and they were not pleased. Fear of rebellion brewed in their hearts. They could not allow one man to become a symbol, especially not an outsider. The sound of boots echoed down the corridor. The guards were coming. The brothers rose to their feet, their hands already on their blades. The girl stood in front of the human, her body tense with defiance. The door slammed open and soldiers poured into the room. Their commander sneered, his eyes flicking to the human. "He lives still?" the commander growled. "Then he will not live long." The eldest brother stepped forward, blocking the commander's path. "No," he said, his voice sharp as steel. "You will not touch him." The commander laughed. "Do you dare defy the ruler's law?" The brother's hand tightened on his weapon. "We do not defy the law," he said. "We follow a greater one, honor." The soldiers hesitated, uneasy. They had seen the human's endurance too. They had heard the whispers. Something about this moment felt different. The commander barked an order. "Take them all." But before the guards could move, the brothers' weapons flashed. Steel met steel. The sound of battle filled the chamber. The girl pulled the human closer, shielding him with her body as chaos erupted. For the first time, the human was not alone. For the first time, others bled for him. And in that moment, he understood the power of the oath. It was more than words. It was a bond of blood sealed not by chains, but by choice. By nightfall, the rulers would call them traitors. By nightfall, the city would be hunting them. But for now, in the fire and fury of the oath, they were one. And nothing in the world was more dangerous than men and women who stood together. The clash of steel still echoed through the stone chamber. The brothers stood tall, their weapons dripping with blood, while soldiers lay groaning on the floor. The girl held the human close, shielding him with her small frame, her eyes blazing with defiance. Smoke rose from broken torches, the air thick with the scent of battle. The commander's body lay sprawled near the door, his sneer forever frozen in death. The eldest brother turned sharply. "We cannot stay," he said, his deep voice urgent. "More soldiers will come, and next time, they will bring twice the number." The second brother wiped his blade and nodded. "They will not forgive this insult. We must leave the city tonight." The youngest brother bent down, lifting the human carefully onto his back. The man groaned but did not resist. His strength was almost gone, yet his eyes remained open, burning faintly with the same fire as before. The girl followed close behind as they slipped out of the chamber. The streets outside were alive with whispers. Lanterns glowed in the windows. Shadows moved behind curtains. Everywhere eyes watched them. The human story had already spread. Some faces looked on with fear, others with quiet admiration. But no one spoke a word. No one betrayed them. Silence was its own rebellion. The brothers moved quickly, guiding their sister and the human through narrow alleys. They avoided the main roads where soldiers gathered. The city that once felt like home now felt like a prison. Every tower, every street corner, every banner of the rulers was a reminder of danger. At the gates, guards stood with pikes and glowing spears. The eldest brother cursed under his breath. They will search everyone leaving the city. The girl's heart pounded. What do we do? She asked, clutching the human's arm. The human coughed, his voice hoarse but steady. We find another way. The youngest brother looked at him with surprise. Even broken, he speaks like a leader, he whispered to himself. The eldest caught his words and said nothing, but in his eyes was respect. They led the group toward the old tunnels beneath the city. Long ago, these passages were used by traders, but now they were abandoned. Dark, damp, and filled with echoes. The tunnels stretched like veins beneath the stone. Rats scurried across their path, water dripped from the ceilings. But the brothers moved with certainty. They had trained in every corner of the city, even in the forgotten ones as they descended. Deeper, the air grew colder. The human's breathing weakened. The girl pressed her hand against his chest, desperate to feel his heart still beating. You must hold on, she whispered. You endured the whip. Do not let the darkness take you now. The human gave, a faint smile, his lips stained with blood. I will not fall. Not while you still need me. Behind them, the sound of boots thundered. The soldiers had found their trail. Torches flickered in the distance, voices shouted orders. They are in the tunnels. After them! The second brother cursed, his grip tightening on his blade. They come fast. The eldest raised his weapon. Then we make our stand. But the human, barely conscious, shook his head. No, he rasped. You cannot. Waste your lives here. Keep moving. The brothers hesitated, torn between honor and survival. It was the girl who made the choice. Her voice cut through the air, strong and clear. We move together. If he dies with us. If we live as one. Her words silenced the brothers' doubts. For the first time, their sister sounded like more than family. She sounded like a leader. They pressed onward, the tunnels twisting into darkness. The youngest brother carried the human while the others fought off soldiers who caught up to them. Blades clashed in the gloom, sparks flying against wet stone. The roar of battle mixed with the drip of water. Again and again, the warriors held the line until the path cleared. Again and again. The girl refused to let go of the man's hand. The soldiers' shouts grew fainter behind them. At last, they reached the exit. The tunnel opened into the wild plains beyond the city. The twin suns had risen high, burning the sky with fire. Endless fields stretched before them, broken only by jagged rocks and distant mountains. The air smelled of freedom, yet danger still stalked them. The eldest brother sheathed his blade, his chest heaving with exhaustion. We are free of the city, but not of the rulers. The second brother scanned the horizon. They will hunt us, he said grimly. Their warships will scour these lands until they find us. The human stirred, his eyes half open. Then we keep moving, he whispered. Always forward. The girl brushed the hair from his face, her tears shining in the sunlight. You have nothing left, and yet you still speak of forward, she said softly. The eldest brother placed a heavy hand on the human's shoulder. You gave us strength when we had none. Now we will carry you. As the group moved across the open land, the girl turned her gaze back toward the city. Smoke curled above the towers, banners still flying in cruel pride. But somewhere in those streets, whispers had already taken root. Whispers of a human who endured the whip. Whispers of warriors who bent their knees. Whispers that the old order was not as unshakable as it seemed, but whispers alone would not stop the rulers. The sound of engines rumbled in the distance. The shadow of a massive warship fell across the plains. The brothers looked up, their faces grim. They have sent hunters, the eldest said. They will not rest until we are ash. The girl held the human tighter, her voice trembling but strong. Then let them come, she whispered. For they will learn what it means when courage and loyalty walk together. The warship's shadow swallowed the plains. Engines roared above as soldiers descended in lines of fire, their armor gleaming, their weapons humming with power. The human could not stand, the girl clung to him, and the brothers raised their blades. But they were outnumbered. Dozens of soldiers surrounded them, spears of light aimed at their hearts. The eldest brother growled, but even he knew the truth. This was a battle they could not win. The commander of the warship stepped forward. A tall alien with eyes like ice and a voice sharp as iron. "You run, you fight, but you cannot escape the law," he said. "You, human. Your defiance has spread too far. The people whisper your name, and whispers are dangerous." He turned to the brothers, his lip curling. "And you, warriors, kneeling to an outsider. You have disgraced your blood." The girl stepped forward, her voice trembling with rage. "He saved me. He gave his body for me." The commander silenced her with a gesture, then let him prove his worth in the arena. The soldiers dragged them all aboard the warship. The city loomed again, its towers rising like jagged teeth against the sky. But they were not taken to the dungeons this time. Instead, they were thrown into the great arena at the heart of the city. A place of stone and fire, built for one purpose: spectacle. Crowds filled the high walls, roaring with bloodlust. Children clapped, elders chanted, and soldiers stood guard with their weapons ready. The human was pushed into the center, his body weak but his spirit unbroken. Chains hung from his wrists, his back still raw from the lashes. He could barely breathe, yet he stood tall. The commander's voice boomed across the arena. 10 lashes did not break him. Let us see if the beast will. A gate opened, and from the shadows came a sound that froze the crowd. A low growl, deep and rumbling. The ground shook as a massive creature stepped forward. It was taller than any warrior, its body armored with scales, its jaws lined with teeth like blades. The beast roared, shaking the very stones. The people cheered, eager for blood. The human's heart pounded, his body screamed with pain. But his eyes did not waver. He looked to the girl in the stands, her face pale with terror. He looked to the brothers, their fists clenched, their pride torn. And then he faced the beast. "I am ready," he whispered. Though his body trembled, the beast charged, the human dove aside, the ground cracking where the monster struck. Pain seared through his body as he rolled, barely avoiding its claws. The crowd roared with laughter. "See how weak the human is. He cannot last a minute." But still he rose, staggering, his chest heaving. The beast came again, faster. The human raised his chains, swinging them across its snout. Sparks flew as metal met scale. The beast snarled, enraged, and slammed him into the ground. The human cried out, blood spilling from his lips. The girl screamed his name, the brothers roared in fury, but still he stood, broken, bleeding, but unyielding. The eldest brother's heart shattered. He could not watch anymore. His voice thundered across the arena. "Enough!" He leapt over the wall, blade flashing in the sunlight. The second and youngest followed, their armor gleaming as they landed beside the human. The crowd gasped. The rulers shouted in anger, "This is treason!" But the brothers no longer cared. They formed a wall around the human, their blades raised. The beast roared and lunged, but this time the warriors met its charge. Steel clashed against scale. Sparks showered the arena floor. The eldest slashed deep into its flank. The second drove his blade into its leg. The youngest cut across its jaw, drawing a howl of pain. The human, weak but unbroken, staggered to his feet and wrapped his chains around the beast's neck. With a final cry, he pulled with every ounce of strength he had left. The brothers struck together, blades piercing the beast's chest, and with a final shudder, the monster collapsed, shaking the arena with its fall. Silence followed. The crowd stared in shock. No one had ever seen a human stand against the beast. No one had seen warriors break the law to fight beside him. Bloodied and breathless, the human stood in the center, the brothers at his side. The girl rushed to him, tears streaming. You live, she whispered. He gave her a faint smile. "Not because of me, because of us." The commander's face twisted with fury. "This changes nothing," he roared. But his voice was drowned out by the crowd. They were not laughing now. They were not jeering. They were chanting, "Human! Human! Human!" The rulers exchanged uneasy glances. The people had seen something they could not erase. The brothers knelt beside the human once more, their voices low but strong. "We swore an oath," the eldest said. "Today we seal it, in blood." The human looked down at them, his eyes heavy with exhaustion but filled with quiet pride. "You stood when you could have stayed silent," he whispered. "You fought when you could have turned away. Together we are stronger. The crowd's chant grew louder, echoing through the city. The rulers had wanted a show of weakness. Instead, they had created a legend, and now, nothing could stop it from spreading. The beast's body lay broken. In the arena, smoke rose from its wounds, its massive chest no longer rising. The ground still trembled from its final fall. The human stood swaying, chains hanging from his wrists, blood streaking his body. The three brothers knelt at his side, their blades planted in the stone as a sign of respect. And the girl clung to his arm, her silver eyes filled with tears of relief. For a long moment the arena was silent. Tens of thousands of eyes stared down at the sight before them. The human, weak but unyielding, standing beside warriors who had defied their rulers. The silence broke as a single voice shouted from the crowd, "Honor!" Another followed, "Strength!" And then like thunder the whole arena roared, "Human! Human! Human!" The rulers stood in their high seats, their faces pale with anger. This was not the spectacle they had planned. They had wanted to show weakness, to crush the human and humiliate the warriors. But instead, the people had seen something else. They had seen courage, sacrifice, and unity. The rulers exchanged fearful glances. Whispers among the crowd would spread beyond the city. By tomorrow, every village, every clan, every soldier would know the truth. The commander shouted for silence. "This is treason. The human and these traitors must die." But the words rang hollow. No one moved, no soldier stepped forward. The people's chant drowned his voice. "Human, human, human." The brothers turned to the man who had suffered so much. The eldest spoke first, his voice shaking with emotion. "You gave us back our sister," he said. "You gave us back our honor. And today you gave us back our strength." The second bowed low, his forehead touching the ground. "You bled for us, though you owed us nothing." The youngest followed, tears burning in his eyes. "We are warriors, but you have shown us. The greatest battle is not fought with weapons, but with the heart." Then, in full view of the rulers and the crowd, all three brothers dropped to both knees, their weapons laid at the human's feet, their heads bowed low. The girl gasped, her hands over her mouth. Never in her life had she seen them kneel to anyone. Not kings, not generals, not even to their own father. And yet, here they were, kneeling to a broken human who had no crown, no army, no power but his will. The human stared at them in disbelief. He tried to speak, his voice rough and broken. "I am no king," he whispered. "I do not deserve this." The eldest brother lifted his head, his eyes fierce. "You are more than a king," he said. "Kings take. You gave. Kings demand loyalty. You earned it. Kings rule by fear. You have shown us another way." The girl placed her hand on the human's, her voice soft but steady. "They bow not because you asked them, but because you showed them something greater than law, greater than fear." The human closed his eyes for a moment, his body shaking with exhaustion. He had never wanted glory, never wanted oaths. All he had wanted was to do what was right. But now that simple act had become a spark that no one could put out. The crowd erupted again. Some dropped to their knees, imitating the warriors, row after row, family after family, until hundreds knelt, then thousands. The arena floor shook not with fear, but with unity. The rulers shouted and demanded silence, but no one listened. The tide had turned. The age of fear was breaking. The commander raised his blade in fury. "If no soldier will kill him, then I will." He leapt from the high steps, charging toward the human. But before his strike could fall, the brothers rose as one. Their blades cut through the air. The commander fell, his weapon clattering across the stone. The crowd roared louder than ever. The rulers turned pale, realizing they no longer controlled the will of the people. The human sagged to his knees, his strength nearly gone. The girl caught him, holding him upright. The eldest brother placed his hand over his chest. "We swore an oath," he said, his voice steady. "And now it is not only ours. Look around you, human, they all kneel. The city itself kneels." The human looked across the sea of bowed heads, his heart heavy with the weight of it. "I am only one man," he whispered. But the girl answered, "One man can change everything." The sun broke through the clouds above. Its light bathed the arena in gold, shining on the kneeling warriors and the battered human at their center. The story would spread beyond the city, beyond the plains, beyond the stars, of a human who endured, the whip of warriors who bowed to him, of people who found their courage again. And so the legend was born, not of a king, not of a conqueror, but of a human who stood when no one else would, a human whose strength was sacrifice, a human whose courage taught a world that honor was not in power, but in mercy. The girl pressed, her forehead against his, whispering through her tears, "You saved me, but you gave all of us something greater." The brothers raised their swords high, their voices carrying across the arena. "We bow not as servants, but as brothers." The people shouted their agreement, and from that day forward, the human was no longer an outsider. He was a symbol, a flame that would never die,